Hello guys, I'm John, I'm the Geeky Fanboy, and welcome back to Mr. Robot Season 4. We're at episode 8, an episode which comes after quite an emotional story in last week's episode. So, understandably, this episode is slightly more laid back, you could say. Definitely in terms of what happened compared to last week. With some of the other characters this time around as well, so not just with Elliot and Mr. Robot. We see what happened with Darlene and Dominique. We see some stuff that happened to the Dark Army, and of course we have the aftermath of last week's episode. As always, the first couple of minutes are gonna be spoiler free, and I'll give you a spoiler warning before I jump into details for the episode. So let's go. Okay, so as I mentioned, this episode had the job to kind of follow last week's quite emotionally heavy episode, and it does a good job, I think. Like, we're not just with Elliot this time around, but of course, obviously, we also kind of deal with the aftermath of last week's episode, but we also see what happens to Darlene and Dominique. I think they have a very good conclusion, or sort of conclusion, to their storyline. What happens there, it's quite thrilling, quite exciting in a way, and once again keeps you at the edge of your seat because we're dealing with a Dark Army, and a taxidermy lady, Janice, I know she has a name, continues to be quite creepy, quite intimidating, and yeah, we've got quite some heavy stuff happening in that part of the episode. With a solution that, on the one hand, makes you happy, but on the other hand, also makes you sad. So they're definitely setting up some stuff again, especially with Darlene, and they're leaving it kind of open again what might happen next. But there's some good surprises in that storyline, so good job on that part of the episode. And the other part of the episode obviously deals with the aftermath of the reveal we had, the big reveal, in last week's episode. So we're following Elliot, kind of his emotional journey as he comes to terms with now knowing what actually happened to him as a child. We also see some stuff from his past at the beginning of the episode, which I thought was quite nice. And without going into spoilers, since this is the spoiler-free part, I think it's quite interesting and also very, very emotional how they deal with Elliot now knowing what's going on and whether or not he's gonna let Mr. Robot back in, if he's gonna make a return. And I like how they don't, like, they're not going fully on it, because I don't like it too much if after a big reveal it's all just about that and nothing else happens to the character. They don't really do that. Like, some stuff happens with Elliot story-wise, but also character-wise, so they're able to connect these two things quite well, I thought, and making very clear how this is a journey for Elliot emotionally, and it is very impactful. And especially again the ending to this episode is not necessarily what the fuck, but it's very emotional, and it leaves you with this kind of oof feeling in sort of a good way, I think. Okay, I don't really have anything more to say about the spoiler-free part, so I'm going to jump into spoilers for the episode now. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, turn the video off now. Okay, let's divide this into two parts as well. So I'm first going to talk about Darlene and Dominique, what happened there, and then I'm going to talk about Elliot's storyline. So what happened with Darlene and Dominique I thought was very interesting, very thrilling, some good surprises there. I did not expect them to kill off Dominique, though once again we don't see her dying on screen, so I suppose she is going to make it. Also would be a bit of an undramatic ending, because she just gets like immediately stabbed in the chest and falls down. It would be a bit not a good death. And like I said, I have this rule: if I don't see a character die on screen, they're not officially dead in the show. Same with Tyrell. I did not see this man die on screen, so he's not officially dead yet. So yeah, there's some quite emotionally and morally heavy stuff happening in this episode, because I was with Darlene the whole time. I was like, she's not going to give up Elliot. You don't do that. You do not give up Elliot. But of course, it becomes a bit difficult for her. Not only after Dom gets stabbed in the freaking chest. I'm surprised she's even still alive at the end of this episode. But of course, we also see that the Dark Army is infiltrating Dom's family. So, yeah, Darlene is in this position where she is asked to give up Elliot, or otherwise, not only does Dom most likely die, but also her family gets killed, including children. So, understandably, Darlene is quite upset about this. So obviously Darlene gets told not to tell the Dark Army where Elliot is, but Darlene being the moral person, well, nice person that she is, she does decide to give up Elliot's location, and it doesn't turn out as well as she thought it would, since they do get Elliot's location, but it's the house he was at, at Krista's place, where he was in the previous episode, and obviously he's not there anymore. Like, we see him escape earlier in the episode, and so his phone is apparently there, but Elliot's gone. So, weird taxidermy lady is like, well, that's a problem, and I don't believe you're telling the truth, even though Darlene is very obviously telling the truth. She's like, I don't know what else to tell you. And I was the same. I was like freaking out because I was like, no, she's telling you the truth. God damn it. What else is she supposed to do? If Elliot isn't there, he isn't there. There's nothing else that can be done. But, Janice, with taxidermy lady, just has to continue being creepy and so uncomfortable and being normal, as she explains in this episode. Don't believe that. So she calls Darlene's bluff and decides to give her Dark Army buddies a call to start killing off Dom's family. Of course, everyone's freaking out, but then the phone doesn't get answered, and I immediately thought, something good happened there. And Dom has sort of like a reveal surprise. He's like, you should maybe check my phone. Maybe he called, and it said, I don't know, weird Irish guy or something, lucky Irish bastard. And I was like, I mean, good for him, but who the freaking hell was this? Because I always have trouble remembering characters who were only there for like one episode or two, and I don't know who that was. But luckily they showed his face, and I was like, oh yeah, it's that weird Irish gangster guy she let go. So good, he's helping out, and he saved Dom's family. So I hope they're safe for now. I mean, they're being brought to a safe house, and Dom decides to act after she knows that her family's basically safe in the most badass moment of this entire season, probably. Like, she waits for one of the Dark Army guys to come near her, and she pulls out the knife she is still stuck in her chest, cuts the guy in the legs, grabs his gun, shoots the other guy, then shoots the guy she took the gun from, and then shoots Janice, weird taxidermy lady, in the freaking head. I was literally going, whoa, in my room when this happened, because this was freaking amazing. Like, she just pulls out that knife off her bleeding chest. She can't even really move, but she cuts the guy down and shoots them. And I was so happy when weird taxidermy lady finally died. I'm like, yes, it is finally over with being creepy, being a weird taxidermy lady. I was just so happy when this happened, so relieved. I mean, obviously that means that Dom might get into some more trouble because, Dark Army guys were killed, and we all know the Dark Army doesn't take those kinds of things lightly. So, but for now, good thing that this happened. They call an ambulance. Darlene wants to stay there, which I thought was very sweet. I like how they sort of try to explore their relationship, like how they're hinting at, there's something more there, or at least from Dom's side, there's something more there. So I hope that thinking that Dom is probably going to survive. I hope they maybe are able to explore this relationship between these two women a bit more. I would love to see that. But yeah, Darlene wants to stay, but she gets told by Dom that Darlene should leave and she should find her brother. And yeah, that's what she does. Reluctantly, I have to say. She goes and leaves Dom there. I think she's gonna make it. I'm pretty sure Dom's gonna make it. And Darlene is now off to find Elliot. And I hope she will find him in the next episode. Like, my boy needs support, he needs help, and I want Darlene to be safe. And also, I like the Darlene Elliot dynamic. So I hope they're getting back together, either in next week's episode or the episode after that. Speaking of my precious boy, Elliot, of course, we have to talk about him after what happened last week, after the big reveal that he was molested by his father. It has left quite a heavy impact on him, as you can imagine. They're also sort of diving a bit into his childhood. We see this in the opening of the episode, which I thought was quite interesting, like with kid Elliot. I think he was like 9 years old or something in the museum where he runs off to somewhere. And he hides something in an old wall of the museum. We don't see what it is. But yeah, we see Kid Elliot throughout the episode. I'm not quite sure if that means that Kid Elliot might be another personality, because it was quite hard to tell. But Elliot was definitely having like his classic hallucinations and slightly schizophrenic moments where he imagines someone who isn't actually there and he talks to them. So that happened, but with Kid Elliot. And so this happens while he and Krista manage to get out of the flat where they kill Vera. Yes, still happy about that. And they're driving to the police station, and Elliot is understandably very like catatonic and can't really comprehend what's going on. And when they're at the police station, they have a very lovely, very emotional conversation where Krista's very supportive. It was very good, I thought. And we see Elliot starting to see Kid Elliot on the street, and he follows him. So there definitely seems to be some sort of hallucination thing going on again. He follows him back to the museum that we saw in the beginning of this episode, where he used to hang out as a child. And he has this moment with himself, basically, as he looks out over this big model of the city, whatever that is, and he sort of apologizes to himself in a moment that I thought was very emotional and very heavy, because it's this classic sort of realization he has where he wants to say, "I'm sorry I didn't do anything, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you," which he says to basically his child self, because he feels guilty that he wasn't able to help himself, to help his child self. And I just absolutely hate watching that, because you just want to scream at him. It's not your fault, you were a child, you couldn't protect yourself, like it's like you couldn't do anything. And it's just so sad seeing that he blames himself for what has happened, and he like screams and cries, and his child life isn't really about that. He's like, that's not what I brought you here for. But I thought it was nevertheless quite interesting to see that, also because he's not talking really about himself. He doesn't say, "I couldn't protect myself." He says, "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." So again, this sort of slight personality shift there that I thought was quite interesting. And he follows his the child version of himself to the storage room that we saw in the beginning of the episode where he hid something. So they come back there, and again, I'm not quite sure if this is a personality thing or like a hallucination thing, but we have the same thing that we used to have with Elliot and Mr. Robot, where one of them does something in the room that's actually happening while the other one looks around, but that's just happening inside the head or something like that. So we have this again where I was shortly wondering, okay, does that mean that Kid Elliot is another personality, or is this really just something that happens inside of Elliot's head? So it was a bit vague, but you know, I'm open for interpretations to this. So they are in the storage room, and they go to that old wall, and Elliot pulls out what he hid there as a child, and it looks like a kid's wallet. and he opens it, and there's a key in there, like an old key. And Elliot looks at it, and I think it's his child self who tells him this is, I don't know, like they both realize, okay, this is the key to his old room when he was a child. And Kid Elliot says, we took it from Dad, do you remember? So as becomes evident, they stole the key from Elliot's dad, so he wasn't able to come into Elliot's room to do bad things to him. And moments like those are just so heavy because of the realization of what has actually happened to Elliot, and of what he has gone through, and the things he tried to do in order to protect himself. And maybe it worked, but also didn't. And just like this whole dynamic between adult Elliot and kid Elliot is so interesting, because also once again, I had this sort of idea that, okay, Kid Elliot is sort of like this core personality, so like the one that is actual Elliot, and the adult Elliot is just another personality maybe that handles day-to-day life, but try to also deal with the trauma or something. Because like I mentioned earlier, he doesn't really talk to himself in like first person. He doesn't say I couldn't protect myself, since he is talking to himself, but he's talking about himself in the third person, like he might be another personality. Which I know sounds completely confusing, as I'm realizing right now, but you probably know what I mean. I hope so. But yeah, I'm interested as to see if they're going to explore this a bit more in future episodes, like with they're obviously going to address some stuff in his childhood. I would assume so that they will do that again. But also if we see more of Kid Elliot, and if we find out if Kid Elliot is just like a hallucination or actually another personality. So we'll see what happens there. And then we come to the ending of the episode, which, once again, I'm saying this every week, is the best part of this episode. The last scene between Elliot and Mr. Robot. Like, we have Elliot sitting in Allsafe, where he usually works, and then we see a character coming into frame. I'm like, is this? And yes, it is. We see Mr. Robot slowly coming back, looking very upset, very worried. And the thing is, after what happened last week, I wasn't sure if I was happy to see him. Like, I know that he isn't Elliot's father, but he looks like Elliot's father. Like, he represents a version of Elliot's father. And I thought, on the one hand, I thought, oh, I'm glad this regular character that I have enjoyed so far is coming back. But on the other hand, I thought, oh no, you look like the man who did bad things to Elliot. So, that was very difficult to handle, but it was such an interesting scene, a very emotional scene. And I didn't full on cry like last week, but like there were I had wet eyes, because this scene is so amazingly acted, especially by Christian Slater. Like, I just have to put that out there. He has this like tiny monologue where he slowly tries to approach Elliot again and talks about like his past and how he tried to protect him, and that he's sorry about what happened, and he asks him why is he letting him back in, which is the moment where I realized, oh, okay, so it's actually Elliot who sort of decided, okay, I'm willing to let the Mr. Robot identity back into my head, which I thought was quite interesting, because I thought it would be rather difficult for Elliot to let Mr. Robot back in. And you kind of see that, because Elliot doesn't look at him for most of the scene. Like, he's turned around, we only see Mr. Robot slowly coming towards Elliot in this very worried, very sad way. And yeah, like the stuff he says is amazingly acted by Christian Slater. Like, you could just feel the pain, the hurt, like all the worries that he felt. That he felt miserable for what happened to Elliot, and that he wasn't able to protect him any longer. And I absolutely love that scene. It was very emotional. It was very well acted by both actors, but I feel like I have to praise Christian Slater especially for this. And the scene comes to an end with Elliot finally turning around in his chair, looking at Mr. Robot, where they both kind of come to an understanding that they both still need each other and want to be around each other. And also Elliot says, I know that you're not my father. So like Mr. Robot just, like I mentioned earlier, represents a version of his father. It's the version Elliot needed or always wanted from his dad, but didn't have because his dad was a bad person. So it concludes in a very emotional way, where Elliot is sitting in a chair and Mr. Robot, you can see him hesitate a bit, which I thought was a nice touch, before he like touches him on the shoulder and they sort of hug. And Elliot again has like a complete breakdown, starts crying, and he says out loud, I don't think I can do this. Like he says, I can't do this, like the hacking thing, because we see him trying to do stuff on the computer, but it's very slow, and he doesn't really want to do it anymore. And then he says it towards the end. He says, I can't do this. And honestly, I thought, that's fine. Like, it's understandable, like, why he wouldn't feel like he's able to do this anymore. And I thought, Elliot, it's fine. Like, the stuff you're dealing with right now, the stuff he now knows and how he feels now must be so overwhelming and so hurtful in so many ways. And when he says, I can't do this, I don't even feel so bad about it, because I feel like, okay, yes, he has legitimate reasons to say this. And it's going to be interesting to see if this is just something he says in the moment because he feels like this right now. That he feels like he can't do this right now. Or if it's something that's actually going to be there long term, since also the Deus meeting thing is coming up, and since he wanted to do this whole hacking thing, but now he says, I don't want to do this. So we'll see if that has really like a long-lasting impact, that because he doesn't want to do it. So yeah, we'll see how that develops in the upcoming episodes, because he mentions that the Deus group meeting is going to happen in an hour or so. So we'll see if he actually goes there. I mean, on the one hand, I hope he does, because, you know, plot development, and it's the thing we've been concentrating on for the past couple of weeks. But on the other hand, I'm like, he's in such a dark place right now, and I just want Elliot to be able to kind of deal with this, get some help, and take a break, so to speak, because everything's just so overwhelming and emotional for him. Like I said, I understand why he says, I can't do this. I get it, I understand it, and I can't blame him for this. And I'm curious as to see if they're going with, okay, we're doing the regular story development with the Deus group and Dark Army and all that, or if they also decide to like concentrate a bit more on Elliot and Elliot's personality and his past. So maybe we see some more dealings with that in next week's episode, where he, I don't know, maybe he talks some more to his kid version, to Kid Elliot, and I'm also assuming he's still got some stuff to figure out with Mr. Robot. They had this very emotional conversation now, but I'm assuming there's still some stuff between them as well. Also, it's going to be interesting with Darlene now trying to find Elliot again. I'm assuming she will find him again, and if he really sticks to this, I can't do this, meaning he doesn't feel like he can do the whole hacking Dark Army Deus group thing, at least at the moment, like, what's Darlene's reaction going to be to this? And also, even more important, did Darlene know about this whole thing? Like, that's going to be quite interesting to see if she was actually aware of the sexual abuse that happened to Elliot. Like, I'm assuming that to a certain degree she was aware of this, since we know that Elliot tried to hide Darlene in the wardrobe when his father wanted to come into the room, like on the day he fell through the window. So I'm assuming that maybe both of them were aware of this. We'll see what happens. I can see some quite some interesting stuff happening there, in a good or in the bad way. In a good way, that Darlene is going to be very supportive, and like that she maybe didn't really know about this at all. Like she knew that maybe something bad was going on, but she didn't know at all, and now is trying to support Elliot. The bad thing would be that she was actually aware of what was going on and didn't tell Elliot. Also not now as an adult, or like was never able to do anything. So I can definitely see this coming up as like a problematic issue in future episodes. Apart from that, we'll have to see if the Deus group meeting happens next week. Like I said, I hope it does. Will be quite interesting. I would like to see White Rose again, what she's up to, the whole Dark Army stuff, if that is resolved for now with Dominique at least. And yeah, just how the whole hacking stuff, if that's gonna be on hold for now or not, because I personally wouldn't mind that. Like I'm very interested in those like character moments and character relationships, especially when it's about Elliot and Mr. Robot. So I wouldn't mind either way. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this week's episode of Mr. Robot. What are your thoughts on it? Put something down in the comments below. Let's discuss the episode theories. Whatever. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little review, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.